Let's try to sculpt the head. So we will be sculpting in ZBrush using Wacom tablet, very old ZBrush version 2021. So the aim will be to sculpt realistic head out of the sphere step by step. So this is like not realistic completely, so basically you cannot apply texture and perceive it as a like a super realistic head, but more or less realistic. So if you will, you can turn this head into realistic by using the realistic hair and eyelashes and skin texture and so forth and so on. But the aim is not to sculpt realistically completely, like photorealistically, but to learn the basic shapes of the head and to learn to be able to sculpt as a classical sculptor. So, and as I mentioned, we're going to be using a sphere as a basic mesh. We'll be beginning from. This is like a polysphere from the ZBrush, nothing special. And the reason why I'm starting with the sphere, not with the kid mesh models or some kind of base meshes already, is because it's more fun and more interesting. My symmetry is on, perspective is off. I can turn on perspective in case if I need to, but it seems like at least from beginning there is no special need for using symmetry. So basically any mesh that we sculpting is a symmetric in the beginning, and then later to avoid like the uncanny valley effect, so we're going to destroy the symmetry, but that is in the very end of the sculpting process. Pay attention to this icon, to this head, which you can see in a ZBrush. Basically, that's going to be the projections that we're going to use. Like this is the front, this is the profile, and this is the back. So basically, you're going to using the same projections. Okay, and the basic shape in the head always starts from the helmet. So basically, the helmet head is the one that we're going to be using as a beginning, because it kind of keeps inside all the the shapes of the head, like it's going to be inside in a helmet. So we're going to pull it out, and it's a very popular way of sculpting the head. And we also going to use dynamesh, in geometry dynamesh. We're going to be restoring the geometry, because sometimes by pulling or pushing too much the mesh will become like unusable. So I'm going to use dynamesh, and also maybe I'll turn down a little bit of resolution. It's much better to use a low resolution because it increases the speed of sculpting, and it also is good to learn to use low res sculpting. Habit of using low res basically avoids you from focusing on details before it is even necessary, because you have to start from simple and then you have to go to the complex. And in order to avoid of doing too much details in a simple level, if you use the low res, so you are not tempted to use to basically work on details as much as if your resolution is higher. So we'll be trying to stick with a lower resolution. First target, what we are aiming to is this. Let me use transform and split screen. The target will be this kind of head. It's kind of like a first level blockout. So we'll be, by looking at this head, we'll be adjusting the shape. I can turn off the side by side just to increase the space and not to be messed with these kind of things. But let's see, at least in this level, while we're working on the base mesh, basically on this first level, that's kind of okay to have this guy side by side. Later we're going to continue with this these shapes, and this realistic head supposed to be fitting in over the existing project. So let's pull some neck out. So I mask it with the control, and then I invert the mask. So that's going to be the neck. This is very like typical, very common way of creating the head. So let's pull out the neck, and as you can see here, geometry is getting messed, and if you want to work on this area, then you see the polygons are stretched. So that's why the dynamesh is very good option. So by dynameshing, we putting in order all the polygons. Okay, we have some sort of a neck, and now we have to pull some shoulders out of this interesting forms. So you don't have to worry about like the shapes at the moment, because we'll be sculpting a lot. And why I didn't dynamesh the first time, because we had mask on, and the same basically movement turns off the masking, and also at the same time, if you don't have any mask, then basically what it does, it dynameshes polygons. So let's create some kind of like a shoulders here, and I'll be talking a little bit about anatomy, but if you want to learn more about anatomy, then you want to see the anatomy video courses that I'm planning to release. And also another option, before we have courses, you can use also the books of Anatomy for Sculptors. We have 4 books released. The first book was Anatomy for Sculptors. It's kind of general about everything. The second book is called Anatomy of Facial Expression, which basically focuses on the facial expression of the human. The third one was the form of the head and neck. And the fourth, the last one, what I have at the moment, is the book called Arm and Handed Motion is the last one. So basically focusing on hands and arms. So it's more like a reference book. Not so much about learning, but more about like the referencing. I have something already. The important thing to note, the neck is not coming vertically, it's coming from the front of the torso. I will make kind of like a simple shapes, and then later I will explain you more what those shapes are made of and what kind of anatomical sense determining them, and we'll be focusing more on the head and a little bit on the neck and a very little bit on the torso. So just this upper part, because you cannot really separate the torso from the body, because like every element is connected with other elements, and as soon as they are connected, you cannot really separate them straight line. You cannot connect, like head is connected with the neck, but it's not connected sharply. It's kind of blending in. The neck is blending into the head, or vice versa, and the neck is actually blending into the torso. So you cannot separate one form from another, and otherwise you're losing the context, and it's really hard to understand the forms. So that's why we are forced to use these kind of combinations, like head and neck and torso. In ideal case, you sculpt not only the head and neck, but you sculpt basically the whole body. While you don't have any subdivision levels, you are also able to shape the geometry. And sometimes it saves your time, so you don't really have to, sculpt every single straight line, because you just can take just the shaver, and then you shave the whole surface, and it becomes kind of like a clean cut. It's kind of leaning forward, as you can see. We need to correct the position, so it's not like a kind of like a head leaning forward. So let's straighten it up. And later would be nice to check with the previous model, so we don't go too far away. So see, this is like the model, and I will put it inside just to be in the same context approximately, because we're going to be using this model as a reference. Let's split the screen and keep working on them. So now you can already see there is some jawline missing here, so there is already some features start to be appearing. Later we will be adding some elements, and what I understand with the elements, those are the elements of the head, and those are ears, mouth, nose, and eyes. And we'll be adding before not only elements, but the whole areas, the eye area, the mouth area, because you cannot really talk about elements together with it. Similarly, like I was talking about the head and neck and torso, same thing with elements. So you cannot really sculpt only on the eye or nose without the context of the head or the face. So that's why we'll be adding these in complex systems. So basically, at least we have some helmet kind of shape, which gives us ability to start already working on some kind of like elements, as I mentioned, elements of the face. And the next will be adding the eye sockets, adding the nose and mouth and ears, and start to make something similar to this block out number 1.